All right, here we go. Hey, what's going on, Zoom people? Hey, Dr. Ian here, Dr. Autoimmune. We have got a simultaneous webinar TikTok live going on here. So let's get our screen flipped so you guys can actually read my handwriting. Here we go. Again, Dr. Ian here, Dr. Autoimmune. This is the first ever long haul recovery lecture. So excited that you guys are here. You're giving up your time to hang out with me tonight. If you guys don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Ian. I've been practicing functional medicine for over 15 years. Still going strong. We work in a 100% remote clinical practice. We're basically 100% telemedicine. And my goal has really been helping people understand the root cause, the reasons why they have issues, rather than we name it, blame it, and tame it with a pharmaceutical. So long haul is one of these interesting new topics coming out. There are literally millions of people, tens of millions of people dealing with what we would technically consider to be long haul. So basically, to actually be considered to have long haul, okay, we have a vid infection, okay? Now that in and of itself can cause issues, including people died, right, and are still dying actually from COVID infections. But what's important is that now, 3 months post, right, we still have significant symptoms and objective findings. Okay, like people still have issues with their pulse ox. People are still having breathlessness. People are still getting brain fog, right? People are still having chronic fatigue, muscle pain, headaches, right? So, what's up, Kimmy? Good to have you here. So now, again, if we know that it's been 3 months, right, and we're still dealing with symptoms, we're now technically considered long haul. So again, now we need to understand, well, what essentially is long haul? Well, basically what's happened is we've lost control of inflammation, right? So that's a huge hallmark of what long haul is. That inflammation has dampened your mitochondria. And what do mitochondria do? Mitochondria produce energy, right? They are the powerhouse of the cell. But simultaneously, a high percentage of people with long haul are now going through the process and the stages of autoimmunity. So we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff. I'm going to kind of stick to the whiteboard at first. We'll go through things, whether you're on the webinar or whether you're actually, again, on TikTok. You guys are welcome to ask questions. If I don't get to your questions initially, just send me a DM. It's cool. I'll respond to direct messages, but I will eventually start getting into more questions. So again, since really 2021, we've been seeing a significant bump and increase of people coming in who's saying, hey, look, again, it seems like the timeline was that I had COVID, I had kind of a bad COVID experience, and then I came out of COVID still with lingering symptoms. And again, what's unfortunate, right, is that in the medical model, they use pharmaceuticals which failed miserably. And then also at the same time, we're being told, right, that you should continue to get the experimental biologic agent, even though we know that spike protein, right, so spike protein, no matter what, is going to induce inflammation. It doesn't matter where we get it from, it is going to induce inflammation. So then the question becomes, okay, well then what are we gonna do? Like, why am I still dealing with these symptoms? What can we do different? And what are my root causes that, one, actually as you were going through the infection, that's actually your state, right? What metabolically was going on with you in your body at that moment, that led to the long haul issues. So that's the first point that I want to make, is that the health and the status of your health of these different systems as you went through the COVID infection is what actually sets you up to have long haul issues on the back end. Okay? So why this is important is because, again, if we're not looking and digging into your physiology, your biochemistry, what's weak in your system, very likely you will continue to get COVID infections. It will continue to cause problems. You will still continue to actually have more disease, and that will start to pile up over time. Soon as we have one autoimmune condition, we know that there's a 50% chance that you're going to have a second autoimmune condition at the time of diagnosis. Now again, what is autoimmunity? It essentially is that you have autoantibodies against your own tissue outside the lab reference range, and you have tissue damage. And that is absolutely the case of what we're going to see in long haul cases. Okay? So one of the things that is also incredibly common is the people that are dealing with smell defects. Are there anybody else that actually are still dealing with smell issues? Parosmia, right? Anosmia, hyposmia, so these smell changes. It smells like tires, or I can't smell the trash, or I can't smell my food anymore. Okay, so if you guys are dealing with that, right? So remember, spike protein, right? Okay, one of the manifestations, right? Strong manifestation is going to be neurologic inflammation. Okay, so your temporal lobe is what processes sensory info. So that's smell. Your hearing, taste, those kinds of things, right? So the reason why this is important is because, again, to have symptoms of a change in smell means there is brain-based inflammation going on. But what's even more critical is that it's actually going to be found in your temporal lobe. Now, what else does your temporal lobe do? You guys walk into a room and you go, what was I doing here? Why did I just walk into the room? Has anyone ever had that experience where they walk into a room and they go, I got to go back where I came from because I don't remember what I was doing here? All the time, right? So we joke with that and we say, hey, that's a senior moment. That's not a joke. That means your temporal lobe is failing, is what that means. But that's also a sign of cognitive decline. So literally, when we have lack of smell and we have other temporal lobe findings going on, our memory change, we're dealing with brain fog, right? Concentration and focus, and very commonly, check this out, it's upwards of 30% of people dealing with long haul are actually clinically depressed. We know that depression is a manifestation of brain and heavily gut. And we're going to talk about, again, spike protein, gut, dysbiosis, and how this all ties into long haul. Okay? So, but again, if you've seen changes in smell, if you're dealing with, again, memory-related issues, then we know that your temporal lobe is what's been impacted. And that, again, is where we do short-term to long-term memory. So this is no joke. And again, the number one associated and the most sensitive indication of cognitive decline, loss of cognitive function, is a change in smell or taste. There's no blood test for Alzheimer's. There's no blood test for dementia. So what we have to start to look at is, hey, what's presenting with you on your findings? What happened to you in your timeline? And then using a functional medicine model, we can start to say, hey, like, what are the things, again, that are pushing people towards that direction. Like I said, one of the claims that I made is that the reason why people are dealing with long haul and are suffering from long haul is the state of their health going into the infection. Meaning, if you were inflamed, if you had problems with your gut, if you had nutrient deficiencies, if you were insulin resistant, as I'm going to start talking about these mechanisms, this is the reason why you still have long haul. This is why you still have brain fog coming out of a COVID infection. This is why you had hormonal changes. This is why you have breathlessness, why you can't exercise anymore, why you have fatigue and you have muscle pain. And it's been absolutely horrible. I know. Because guess what? Since COVID hit, okay, I've been dealing with these clients. Since we released the experimental biologic agent, aka the jab, I have had those clients in my office because your immune system does not differentiate. Spike protein is spike protein. The binding receptors for a native infection is the exact same thing as it relates to a vaccination. And that's going to probably ruffle feathers, and some people are going to be mad about that. But we know that people were injured as a result of the vaccine. We know that the infection is no joke. It is a real deal, and it's some kind of fake thing. Now, where it came from, because we're not going to get too deep into that, but it's pretty obvious at that point when Moderna, who owned the patent on the sequence that changed SARS-CoV into the new version of SARS-CoV, where all this came from. Just that lab in China. Well, where did that sequence come from? It's called the furin sequence. If you guys want to get really pissed off, right, there's something called the furin sequence. That is what made the last pandemic of SARS-CoV different than the one we're dealing with now, is they inserted a new sequence. And it was a patented sequence. It's out there. We know why this happened. So the bummer is now we have to pick up the pieces because, again, those people that especially were not in the best of health went through a SARS-CoV infection, and then there was major manifestations because things like ACE receptors, right, were downregulated, angiotensin 2 was increased, C-reactive protein went up. How many people here, okay, again, we're talking about webinar, right? We got 12 people on the webinar. What up, TikTok? We got 274 people on TikTok. So let me just ask you guys this. Who is dealing with C-reactive protein issues after a COVID infection? Who went into a COVID infection and then on the way out, it was found when you guys did blood work, because you have all these symptoms, that you actually have elevated inflammation markers. This is one of the most common factors as it relates to long haul. Okay? Right. Your wife got CIDP after the vaccine. Again, common. I've seen it. We've helped those clients as well. Okay? And again, at the end, guys, we'll talk about this, about what we're doing in their practice and how we're doing it different. I mean, there's whole COVID clinics that are popping up, but it's really sad because they're kind of offering the same medical care that really keeps people in the medical system. Like, drugs are not going to be the solution to actually fix this. Now, however, there is an argument to be made that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, HCQ, can be used in tandem in the acute stage. It's not going to help you after you go through the actual infection. So this is why, right, we have to start looking at your labs. You have to start looking at what are your symptoms, what was your timeline, and have you checked into your physiology that's leading you down this path where you still are trying to navigate all these symptoms. You're throwing supplements at the problem. Oh, I'm going to change my diet. Well, I have high blood pressure, so I have to take a high blood pressure medication now. You know, like, that's the insanity. And it's like we're trying to, again, take one bite out of this elephant, but the reality is you're not biting in enough places to actually to make a significant clinical difference. Okay? So again, one of the things that we have to understand is that every single tissue in your body, right, has these ACE, right, receptors. So what happens is that when you get an actual COVID infection, you drop ACE receptors down, you actually decrease ACE activity, and that increases something called angiotensin 2. So what happens is this actually starts to increase fibrinogen, i.e. clots, strokes, okay, vascular inflammation. Now the crazy thing is that one of the organ systems in our body that has, now that's obviously lung tissue, right? And we have a lot of ACE receptors in our lung tissue, but the actual area where we have like one of the highest concentrations of ACE receptors is, guess what? The gastrointestinal tract. So again, I'm going to ask this question, and I already know the answer to it, but I want to ask you guys to keep you guys engaged, right? Because people need to hear this information. People need to hear that there's actually hope, that there's things that you can do about this. Because there absolutely is. Most people that we work with, within a 4 to 6 month period of time, they are back to themselves. They are back. Maybe they're not perfect. Maybe they still had some tissue damage. Maybe they actually had a stroke or they had a heart attack, right? But they are back and their symptoms are in control and their inflammation markers are down. But one of these big issues that is really lacking in Western medicine is the fact that we're ignoring the gastrointestinal tract as a target of COVID. Now again, if you've heard my lectures, when you involve your gut, which is where 70% of your immune system is, it's not like Vegas. What happens in your gut does not stay in your gut. When your gut is inflamed, and especially when spike protein hits those ACE receptors, drops them down, and increases something called angiotensin 2, that actually is happening in your gut as well. So now what's going to happen? Well, guess what? For those people that actually had something called dysbiosis, they had an abnormal ratio of good and bad bacteria, when those ACE receptors got dropped, all of a sudden, their dysbiosis went through the roof. So all of a sudden, they started getting brain fog, and they got new gut symptoms, and they started getting fatigue. And they had like, well, why the hell did all this stuff happen? Well, again, because you had problems with your gut going into the infection. And you didn't know that because not everyone has gut symptoms. They just don't have them. It's not obvious. One of the most common gut symptoms is actually brain fog. It's not a gut symptom, but it's an indication of inflammation. And like I said, inflammation doesn't stay here. It's going to manifest extra-intestinally, right? And one of those things, again, that's so common is it's involving brain tissue. It's quality of life. It's how you feel on a daily basis. It's your energy level. It's ability to get up. And you're always going to feel like you have to push through your symptoms. The reality is you don't. What you have to do, again, guys, listen to me, okay? What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to figure out what are the systems that cause the inflammation to become out of control. Because if you don't figure out what was, again, driving this issue in the first place, you essentially, remember, 30% of upper respiratory tract infections are COVID. We're not dealing with as intense of COVID disease activity now, right? So it's kind of downshifted, but you're still more than likely going to get more COVID infections in your life. And so then the question becomes, is it the next one? Is it the one after that? Like, what's the one that's going to knock you out? And again, so many people were knocked out as a result. The crazy thing, I was reading some research last night. There was a research article that looked, again, retrospectively at young people, age 16 to 30. Long haul symptoms or the long haul diagnosis is as high as 60% in people age 16 to 30. Some of the worst inflammatory cases I've seen in long haul are actually young people. Because guess what? Those people had antibiotics. Those people are insulin resistant. Those people are nutrient deficient. They have low levels of vitamin D, right? So we're going to talk about that, but just keep in mind, this is not something that's just only impacting people who are old. This is impacting everyone. Okay? So again, and don't worry, we'll get into questions. If you guys, by the way, I'm going to say this a couple times. If you can't listen to this whole lecture, if you want to hear this whole lecture, we're going to put this up on YouTube when we're done. So you just need to email info@drautoimmune.com. And what we're going to load this up for you guys so you can watch the whole lecture. If you guys know of friends and family members who are dealing with long haul, they're struggling, they don't know what to do, again, please send that to them. Get them to send a request with their email to our staff. Okay, it's info@drautoimmune.com. And that's going to allow those people to actually watch this full lecture. Okay, so I appreciate that. Anyways, so back to here, right? One of the things that we have found that actually helps to downregulate the ACE receptors and actually seems to be helping as it relates to this angiotensin 2 issue is none other than quercetin. So quercetin, and then actually also say luteolin, which is a form of a bioflavonoid. Actually, there's some really solid research out there now showing that actually some of that inflammation can be tamed if we take therapeutic doses and high-grade quercetin. Now you can find, again, quercetin is another form of a bioflavonoid just like luteolin is. You can find that in foods, but you want to get in concentrated forms as well. Okay? So, again, back to what we were saying, right, is that part of what happened here with spike protein, okay, is that it actually activates something called toll-like receptors 2 and 4. So toll-like receptors are found on mucosal surfaces, all right? 2 and 4 are one of the most important ones. Now, this is where this is really important because, again, toll-like receptor 2 and 4, which spike protein stimulates regardless of if it's an infection or a vaccination, is going to then upregulate and increase interleukin 1, interleukin 6, TNF alpha. Okay? Now, you may have heard of those chemicals because those combined is what creates C-reactive protein. Now remember, you want to measure the high sensitivity. Okay, it should be less than a 1.0. Less than a 1.0. So guys, just for right now, just curious, right? What is your C-reactive protein level? Put that in the chat. Okay? Because this is so important. This is a critical piece if you have, right, an elevated C-reactive protein. 73. Dang. All right, anyone beat a 73? Recently, we actually saw a 69 C-reactive protein. Within 4 months, we got it underneath a point. It was less than 0.1, which was pretty amazing. And again, I saw her at the beginning of her care, and she was essentially bound to her chair. She was so inflamed, so dysfunctional. She was basically headed. She was in. She had actually just been approved for disability, and she was a nurse. And so she has a kind of an interesting story. But we got her C-reactive protein from literally it was a 67 or 69, now underneath a 0.1. Okay. So high sensitivity CRP, less than a 1.0. Now again, spike protein stimulates toll-like receptors 2 and 4, okay? You'll make interleukin 1, interleukin 6, and TNF alpha. Now again, there's drugs that will drop interleukin 6 and TNF alpha, right? Enbrel, Etanercept, Humira, those are the drugs that actually go after the inflammation. Now the inflammation here, right? Guess what? This will actually, right, the inflammation itself causes something called the bystander effect. So the higher that inflammation, the longer it goes on, the more that actually dysregulates your immune system. And I'll talk more about that. But it's important for us to get in front of that inflammation and figure out where it's coming from. So here's the thing. There was a meta-analysis that was published looking back. And basically what it did is it showed that the people that had the highest spikes of C-reactive protein and one of the highest incidences of long haul, not only did they spike their C-reactive protein, but those people had the lowest microbial diversity. What do you mean? What do you mean, Doc? What do you mean microbial diversity? So their flora, the actual bacterial contents in their gut, were in the tank. So why that's important, right, is because inflammation, and especially this right here, this is dampened, right, through your gut flora. So if you, right, if you had what we call dysbiosis, right, which is just, again, it's like, it's a teeter-totter. There's a balance of good and bad, right? So if you had high levels of bad bacteria, low levels of good bacteria, guess what happened? It's like having your foot on the accelerator punching toll-like receptors. So the connection between gut health and long haul is that we know now that dysbiosis, people with low levels of beneficial bacteria, okay, people with high levels of bad bacteria, this could be fungal, this could be other issues going on, right? That's going to push the trigger on these toll-like receptors. You then end up creating more inflammation. You start making C-reactive protein. That drops your immune system down. It's called the bystander effect, right? And guess what happens? It starts to open the channels in your gut. Now, a lot of people actually went into the infection already having leaky gut. But if you didn't have leaky gut before, more than likely one of the manifestations of long haul is actually leaky gut. So if we want to improve our microbiome, we want to bring up the good guys, we want to bring down the bad guys. So just quickly on strategies to actually help you guys with that would be beneficial fiber, okay? You can do that supplementation-wise. You can consume foods that have fiber in it. Now, if you don't break fiber down, it may also be another symptom of dysbiosis. If you guys eat vegetable content and you get gas and bloating, or if you're eating carbs and you're getting gas and bloating, my recommendation would actually be to run a stool test, figure out what's growing in your gut, and customize what you need to do as far as supplementation and diet goes. But some people need to really become very basic on what they're doing in their diet: protein, vegetables, and fruit. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, but the reality is that when you're nutrient dense, you're removing sources of fuel for the bad guys. When you're nutrient dense and you have good vegetable, right, fiber, polyphenols, Alex, yes, polyphenols, right? We have high polyphenol content. What are polyphenols? It's the color in fruits and vegetables, right? When you have high quality protein, animal protein, you're not feeding bad bacteria. So a principle of of tending the garden of your microbiome is going to be nutrient density and avoiding foods that are basically inflammatory. right? It has to be done. I know no one likes it. Yes, most people live off of sugar. And for you guys, again, we're going to talk about this, but the next topic, right, is going to be about how insulin resistance is one of the most important aspects as it relates to long haul. Again, you guys fatiguing after meals and craving sugar all the times, that is insulin resistance. The worst possible outcome statistically of poor outcomes, the worst outcome, and the population that had the worst outcome in acute infections of COVID were type 2 insulin-dependent diabetics. I can't tell you guys, I've had so many nurses, right, under my care over the years. And the nurses during COVID, I asked them pointedly, hey, who are the ones who are dying? And they said, type 2 diabetics, ones that are on insulin. Okay? Janet, long haul is when you have a COVID infection and then 3 months later, you're still dealing with significant symptoms. So what we're talking about is how there are inflammatory mechanisms, there's root cause issues, there's hormonal problems, there's specific reasons why people deal with long haul that are completely ignored by Western medicine, and that it works really well in the functional medicine model, because when you start to understand the systems that were typically dysfunctional as you went into the infection, those are the systems that you're going to have to get a hold of now. If you guys want to get the reins and rein in what's going on as far as the inflammation and the brain fog and the fatigue and the muscle aches and the headaches and the joint pain and all that crap that are secondary after this, you're going to have to look at the systems that were causing it. So like I was just saying, okay, those people that seem to have the worst outcomes of COVID were insulin-dependent type 2 diabetics. They had the highest mortality rate. Those are people that were getting knocked over. And obviously, how many type 2 diabetics do we have in America? We have just a couple. Right? So, again, those people probably had to have insulin based on their condition, but the unfortunate thing is that even giving insulin, you're still extremely insulin resistant. That's the reason why you develop the need to take exogenous insulin. But insulin is also very inflammatory. So again, anyone who has a high level of inflammation going into an infection, that very commonly is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Because the other thing, again, that happens, right, we're going to have to start erasing some of this stuff. What happens, right, is that, okay, when you get inflamed, okay, you increase something called mTOR, and that's related to your mitochondria, okay? That's why you're fatigued all the time. That's why you have brain fog as well, potentially. But also what's going to happen is you will increase something called interleukin 17, and by default, you decrease something called T reg cells. So inflammation goes up, your mitochondria activity goes down, your inflammation goes up, and then your T regulatory cells go down. T reg cells regulate your immune system, and they are the generals of our immune system. So guess what? The chance that you have, again, not just long haul, but autoimmunity as a result of the COVID infection is substantially higher if you're having symptoms 3 months after a COVID infection. Does that make sense with everyone? Again, chronically inflamed, your mitochondria is what's producing energy. If they don't produce energy anymore, that inflammation is going to start to allow other inflammatory markers to spike. Your immune system is dropped. You don't regulate your immune system anymore. So guess what? How many people out there developed type 1 diabetes? You guys are dealing with dysautonomia, right? You got Hashimoto's. You got lupus. You got Guillain-Barré syndrome. right? So these are the conditions that now people are getting, but it didn't just drop on your head. There was a specific, right, set of events that led you down that path. And I'm telling you right now, right, you guys can reverse that. Dysautonomia is not just taking a beta blocker and drinking a lot of fluids and consuming salt. In fact, guess what? Most of what dysautonomia is, these are for the people that their heart rate's going all over the place, their blood pressure, they can't stabilize their blood pressure, they come from a seated to a standing, they pass out, right? There is a avalanche of dysautonomia in our country right now. But literally, one of the strategies you're going to hear on TikTok all the time is, oh, you just need to consume a lot of salt. Salt increases interleukin 17. So no, salt is not a long-term strategy to address dysautonomia. Yes, POTS. We're talking about POTS. Okay? So understand, right, there's always a mechanism behind what's going on. But now again, part of what's happening here, right, is this leaky gut phenomenon. So like I said, there are two things that drive leaky gut. And leaky gut is present. Well, there's lots of things that drive leaky gut, but I'm going to give you guys two top things that I see in my practice on a regular basis that drives leaky gut. Okay? If you had leaky gut going into a COVID infection, you were probably way worse coming out of it. So two things that I can mention for you guys right off the top, right? One is you actually have food sensitivities. If you actually have dairy or wheat, which would be the most common, gluten is the #1 food sensitivity out there. But if you do have reactions to gluten, one exposure can cause inflammation for up to 3 to 6 months. Literally, gluten sensitivity and that development of that leaky gut is causing immune suppression. It is allowing your inflammation to go up. On top of the fact that gluten, most of the time, actually also contains pesticides. So there's that too. Secondly, right, and again, by the way, you can't just test tissue transglutaminase IgA, i.e. the celiac marker, and assume if you're negative on a celiac test that you can eat wheat. It doesn't work like that. Okay? The second piece is, again, if you have an abnormal overgrowth of bad bacteria versus beneficial, meaning if you have insufficient beneficial bacteria, or you have an overgrowth, again, that is going to facilitate the inability to manage inflammation, and that's going to lead to chronic symptoms. So like I was saying, there's ACE receptors in the gut. ACE receptors were downregulated as a result of the spike protein that typically actually facilitates dysbiosis, so that makes the gut issue worse. You lose more control of your immune system. People start to develop autoimmune issues after they had the vaccine, after they had the infection, and they went down that golden brick road. When they're trying to figure out, like, what the hell do we do now? Do you just take an anti-inflammatory and call it good? No. You're going to have to go back and figure out, why do you have that gut inflammation? What's driving that? Is it your diet? Could be coming from hormones, right? Could be coming from the environment. Could be coming just because of what's actually growing in the gut itself. That's where testing comes in. So again, guys, if you don't know, again, I'm a functional medicine practitioner. We test, we don't guess. So for me, I'm going to run something called a GI map on the vast majority of my clients, because most people have terrible microbiomes. Then we figure out what's wrong with you. We customize recommendations, supplementation, diet, etc. That'll actually, again, give you a different outcome than what you're getting right now. Because again, the definition of insanity, you guys may have heard this before, it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Okay, so again, we'll talk more about this at the end, but again, we have a new patient special right now. It's $350. That includes a 90 marker blood panel. That is 90 minutes of my time. Doesn't include a stool test, okay? But it's the basics, so we can start to point the finger of what direction you need to focus on. This is for those people that are sick and tired of throwing money or going to TikTok shop, buying supplements, trying this, I tried that diet. It's like, again, you have to check off enough boxes to really start to see your physiology change. But once you do the right things for what your body's asking, it will start to heal itself. Okay? So again, let's talk about some of the other mechanisms, right? Some of the other mechanisms where people were really, again, struggling, and that actually seems to be linked to long haul. One of those is going to be low vitamin D. So the interesting thing is, right, is that vitamin D regulates something called NF-kappa B. This is a hard-hitting inflammatory molecule in your body. Now, inflammation is healthy. Lack of regulation of inflammation is unhealthy. So vitamin D is one of the hormones that our body needs. It's not a vitamin, it's a hormone that helps you contain and regulate NF-kappa B. What was one of the most common issue? Well, again, one of the things that we figured out early in the COVID era was that, oh my gosh, these people's inflammation, they're out of control. And what's implicated was these crazy spikes in nuclear factor kappa beta. Well, guess what? Again, vitamin D is one of the things that actually helps regulate that. So there was a peer-reviewed research analysis that came out. Again, a meta-analysis looked at all the vitamin D research, and it basically said if you went into the COVID infection with the vitamin D level above a 50, you would not die from COVID. That's a pretty profound statement to say in peer-reviewed research, because guess what? It's must have been at least 100 articles actually got retracted during the COVID era because those articles did not fit the paradigm. They didn't fit the narrative. So literally there was all these articles being retracted because essentially Big Pharma was saying, hey, we need to pay researchers to go find the research articles that aren't fitting with our agenda. So vitamin D is absolutely critical. Again, everyone's a little bit different as far as what their need is, but anywhere from 50 to 80 is a good number. And guys, if you guys can't get your vitamin D levels up, that's an indication of absorption issues. You may not be taking enough. Obviously, you may not be getting enough sun. It's dark out. But 2 or 3, you may not be absorbing what you're taking too. So consider that as well. So again, vitamin D levels 50 to 80 is where we kind of want them. Now the other crazy thing, guys, look, besides that, vitamin D inhibits viral replication. You guys know what one of the outcome markers that they use in the research for the vaccine is what we call antibody response. Okay? The reason why I bring this up is that they were gauging research based on the antibodies produced via the inoculation that they gave people. The question needs to be, how does COVID spread itself? Does anybody know? So COVID spreads itself cell to cell. Meaning the virus binds to a cell, and then that cell actually is kind of hijacked and it spreads to another cell. So the replication of COVID is not necessarily tied to antibodies. This is another misnomer, and again, huge issue when you look at the science of what they did in designing the experimental biologic agent that they used. So again, the point is that vitamin D actually also decreases viral replication. Guys, it's antiviral. So again, another amazing thing that we have at our repertoire, and it's cheap. Vitamin D is cheap. Okay? So here, also interestingly, I want to ask this question. Did anybody actually get Epstein-Barr-like symptoms going through COVID or after they went through COVID? Did anyone deal with mono reactivating after they went through COVID? Yvette says yes. GWAS, yep. Yes, yes. So the crazy thing is, right, is that you can actually have a reservoir of bacteria, okay, that can, again, actually stay in your gut. So that's one of the crazy phenomenons behind the SARS-CoV infection. But what seemed to happen is that when people got stressed out because their inflammation, again, levels went up, immune regulation went down, this was the opportunity for essentially the jack in the box to come out. Because herpetic infections, such as human herpetic virus 4, that's Epstein-Barr virus, okay? It stays in nervous system tissue. So when your body becomes stressed, that actually reactivates. But guess what? When you reactivate Epstein-Barr virus, that's another opportunity and chance that you cross-react to your own tissue. So this, again, is another mechanism that literally is driving autoimmune. Now again, like I mentioned, there is a huge connection to cortisol. Cortisol, our stress hormone, is critical as it relates to priming our immune system, especially as it relates to infections. But if you get too much of that cortisol, or if you don't have enough cortisol going into the infection, guess what? It's another significant factor that allows you to reactivate. Or it also will, guess what? If you have high levels of cortisol, suppresses your Lactobacillus acidophilus, your beneficial bacteria in your flora. So again, the bummer is that, again, most doctors, if you go in there and ask to have your cortisol tested, it's protein bound, it's not highly accurate, and you're not checking your cortisol rhythm throughout the day. The rhythm of your cortisol, it is different at different times of the day. So if you want to accurately test what's going on with you, you need to measure this 4 different times during the day. It's called a circadian rhythm test. And any provider can do that. It just may or may not be covered by insurance. Again, this is the nature of the beast that we're dealing with. Remember, if it's not a pharmaceutical outcome, very commonly it's not going to be covered by insurance. It is a harsh reality that we deal with. But again, remember, Western medicine is controlled by pharmaceutical interests. Period. So this is an important piece to look at. And again, what we're finding in my practice as I'm testing clients, they have very dysregulated cortisol rhythms. So adaptogenic herbs, sometimes I'm going to use licorice root. Sometimes we're going to actually, very commonly, we'll actually customize exercise to what people can tolerate and gradually increase that, stepwise increase that over time, right? But another critical piece, okay, that is just so often ignored is dysglycemia and insulin resistance. Now again, people think that getting shaky and irritable and lightheaded in between meals, or if you go too long between meals, hey, that's just a symptom of a need for a Snickers bar, right? Like me becoming a hot mess on the floor and crying and screaming. You just need a Snickers bar. I'm like, I don't know. You might bring their blood sugar up, but then they're going to crash back down. Or you might think that fatiguing after a meal or craving sugar after meals is just a normal symptom. Well, it might be common, right? It might be average, but it's not normal. So did someone say, yeah, Sweet Quest, you appreciated that. Hey, it's good to see you, my dear. Thank you for coming. So appreciate you being here. This is why I'm drinking Mountain Zevia. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine drinking, like I used to drink a bunch of soda back in the day. Mountain Dew, this is Zevia, this is zero sugar, but Mountain Dew has something called brominated vegetable oil in it. Brominated vegetable oil, when they make it, they use mercury to make brominated vegetable oil. It's like, what? Like you need mercury to make soda? I mean, that is insane. So anyways, back to what I was saying. The people that had the worst outcomes of COVID infections were people that were actually already at the extreme end of insulin resistance. But we don't just become insulin resistant overnight. It's a lifetime of dysfunction, right? Going up and down, up and down, up and down. Hormones at the bottom, cortisol, adrenaline, bring those blood sugar levels up. Also, check this out. If you guys are waking up at the same time every night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I always wake up. You guys, you don't have enough glycogen to store throughout the night. So guess what? Bing! You got to use stress hormones to bring your blood sugar up. Okay? Red, if you want to hear about what I was saying about taste and smell, you need to email info@drautoimmune.com and we will send you the whole lecture because I already covered that topic, okay? It's okay, but you can you'll go to our YouTube channel and you can watch this whole lecture, okay? So again, what I was saying, we need stress hormones to bring blood sugar up, okay? That's a problem right there for our immune system. When our blood sugar is spiking and we need insulin to pull that blood sugar back down, that is a stress on the system. Insulin will lead eventually to excess fibrinogen. It will actually start to increase the production of C-reactive protein. Again, we start to downregulate your immune system. And on top of that, you also very commonly will start to induce hormonal changes. Like again, the number one reason why women have estrogen dominance is they're insulin resistant. So here's the deal. If you come and work with me, more than likely, I am going to be giving you one of these. We're going to be selling you one of these, okay? I don't want to mislead you guys. But this is a Libre 3. This is a continuous glucose monitor. This is a game changer because this literally will tell you what you're eating and how that's affecting your blood sugar. You have to know with what is in your diet or with what your blood sugar is doing at nighttime, if it's spiking, if it's dropping, because all those are stressors on your immune system. Behind gut issues, blood sugar is the number 2 reason that I see that is causing autoimmunity in this country. Flat out. Right? No cap. Oh boy. I used the term cringe with my 13-year-old yesterday in the car, and she about died. She's like, "Dad, we don't say that." And I was like, "Well, we do now. Stop being cringe, girl." Right? So, anyways, oh boy. So it's so important that we get blood sugar in check. When we eat, we should neither be fatigued, we should not crave sugar, and we should certainly not crash, right? When we're hungry, we shouldn't have to eat to regain function. You eat, and your blood sugar goes like this. It's stable. That is a normal response when it comes to blood sugar, okay? Alex just said berberine. Not only is berberine something that can help you with your blood sugar, berberine is actually an antimicrobial. And so berberine is something that we use, but actually more commonly, I use berberine as an antimicrobial. Now, the other interesting thing is that there's a compound called artemisinin. Okay, and that's an antimicrobial that's been shown right there to actually help with COVID. Now, the other thing, interesting too, I mentioned there was something called mTOR, right? So mTOR is increased as a result of spike protein dampening mitochondrial activity. The main nutrient to actually help that is called N-acetylcysteine. So NAC is what helps you to improve what we call glutathione. Again, if you type in glutathione and COVID in PubMed or in Google Scholar, you're going to find research that people's level of glutathione is significantly tied to their outcomes of COVID. So again, you guys, what you have to understand, I don't care if you have low level of platelet function, if you have high level platelet function, if you are breathless and just going upstairs, if your heart rate is going crazy, right? If you have Hashimoto's, all the symptoms of thyroid disease now, if you're fatigued, if you're brain fogged, if you have chronic headaches, if you're sore and you're tired, right? And you've got joint pain, you guys, these are all clinical symptoms, right? These are all clinical symptoms of long haul. It's just eventually when you have those symptoms long enough and you have enough of the diagnostic criteria for a disease, they eventually give you the title of what that disease is. What I would rather have you do is start to look at your systems and understand what weakness do you have. And then as you start to understand your weaknesses and you make the appropriate changes, so shall the disease activity resolve. Meaning your symptoms get better. And that's really all we care about. That's what I care about. But really what I also care about is I don't want people going on and developing Parkinson's, developing dementia, having another COVID infection, and then going over the deep end. I love my clients and I love all you guys out there because, again, God has called me and has called all of us to love each other. It's one of the most important tenets of Christ, right? And being a Christian is that we love one another, bar none. And whether or not you're a Christian, we can at least agree on that I think we could use a little bit more love out there, right? So the point is that if you're starting to realize that, wow, well, it seems like my symptoms are kind of out of control, my doctor really doesn't know what to do with me, I've got a new autoimmune diagnosis, whatever it is, there is a specific way to get you off of that roller coaster. For me, that's going to be functional medicine. And really, again, the bottom line is that you use feedback, you use testing, you don't guess, you start using customized supplementation, right? You change your diet, you change the parameters of what you're around. You start to make improvements and that creates momentum. Momentum, as you build on that, creates more momentum. Because again, it's kind of like you're digging yourself out. There's like you're 6 feet down, you're trying to dig yourself out. It takes a lot of work. The question again comes down to, do you want help in knowing where to apply that work? Or do you want to keep guessing? If you don't want to guess anymore, this is why I recommend people, they get a new patient consultation, okay? Come in, let me evaluate you. I'll show you guys what you haven't been shown before. It's not that hard, all right? I have now seen well over 100 long haul clients. This is both from the vaccine, this is both from infections. Okay? It doesn't matter. Spike protein, it doesn't care. It damages tissue no matter what. So when you actually start to commit and start to follow a plan, you will see your C-reactive protein change. You will see your ferritin levels start to decrease, right? You will start to see your insulin levels come down. You will start to see, like, oh my gosh, my brain fog is so much better. And it's not just because we're throwing supplements at this issue. You guys are already throwing supplements at this issue. You know, again, I just had a client today, really smart guy, high-level CEO, very intelligent, okay? And he brought me all these lab tests. And I'm like, again, what he doesn't have is the knowledge to understand how do these lab tests break down into specific recommendations. That's what functional medicine should do, okay? So again, we work all over the United States. We work internationally as well. If you're an international client or interested in what we're doing, you just need to email info@drautoimmune.com. What you guys are going to see here is on the link is, I'm gonna get your questions in just a second, guys. So on the Zoom, you're going to see a link that we're going to paste in, okay? So that will actually, again, be your code as far as being able to sign up for an exam. So we should be able to hopefully see that here fairly soon as far as on the webinar. And hopefully, Jamie, you can put that up here as far as the link for that. And then also TikTok, you guys in TikTok, right? It's okay if you live in Canada. We work with Canadians. It's just a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a PIA to work with you guys because you guys have socialized medicine and there's restrictions on lab testing and they make it pretty much as hard as possible to try to work with you. But I still have Canadians that we do care with. Again, in our bio, in our link tree, you're going to find at the top there's a button that you click, okay? And that is going to get you access to scheduling the payment for your exam which will include your 90 marker blood panel. Okay, so again, $350 covers a 90 marker blood panel. It also includes a 90-minute consultation. Okay, and then you're going to fill out some paperwork, and we give you all that information at the discovery call. So you'll actually schedule a discovery call right after you pay. That's going to get you in with my staff, and then they'll answer any question that you have. You guys, here's the deal. I don't have people that say that they're disappointed after they come in and do a consult with me. If as you go through the discovery call, if you go, I don't want to do it, we'll refund your money. It's not a big deal. What we need is 3 things. We have 3 criteria for people becoming clients, okay? 1 of them is you're willing to change your diet. 2 of them, you're willing to take supplements for what your root causes are. 3rd is you are motivated. If you're not motivated, please don't do this. Don't sign this up. You're going to waste time. You're going to push other people out because we have a bit of a time before you're going to be able to get in. Okay? Again, Addie Jane, no cost on the discovery call. But if you're going to book your initial new patient evaluation, you have to pay the $350. You'll then schedule your discovery call, okay? And then at the discovery call, we will get you set up with the blood kit that will get drop shipped to your house. Now, again, if you build insurance for those 90 marker blood panels that we do, that's over $3,000 worth of blood work. So it is very comprehensive as far as what we look. It's going to look at insulin resistance markers. It's going to look at your vitamin D status. It's going to look at your iron status. It's going to look at autoimmune markers. It's going to look at a full thyroid panel. It does typically much more than what most people have ever actually tested with their medical doctors. Okay, so yeah, and if you guys have labs within a year, you can load those up to the portal and we'll look at that. But I do require everyone do my blood panel. I don't leave stones unturned. And that means I'm not going to ask your physician to order the labs that usually they will not end up getting for us, and that's very frustrating for you because I'm going to have to get you another requisition. You'll have to wait longer to get your blood results back. You're going to have to go to the end of the line, and you're not going to like it because you're going to be like, I was so excited to get in. It's taken me weeks to get in to see Dr. Ian, and then, I didn't have all my labs done. Yeah, that's happened to me way too many times. Okay? So Jerry is having loud ringing issues in the ears for a long time. That's a symptom of neurologic inflammation. So those people that are dealing with tinnitus, that is another common symptom of long haul. Not all tinnitus is long haul, okay? But just understand, if you had a COVID infection and you're now dealing with tinnitus symptoms, it is a common symptom of long haul. Okay? If you're dealing with smell issues on top of that, well, guess what? More than likely, you had blood sugar problems going into COVID. And now you have neurologic inflammation. And that neurologic inflammation is dampening your temporal lobe, which is also why you're dealing with short-term memory loss issues, right? Brain fog. But on top of that, there's a very, very high chance that it's actually a blood sugar problem. Okay? Yeah, tinnitus. There you go. Okay, so let me get into some of these questions for you guys. Here. Tara, increased cardiac CRP. Melanie, ferritin went high, both infections, mild infections, severe long COVID first time, vagus, gut massively inflamed, bedridden, autoimmune, or overactive immune response. Melanie, the answer is both. So again, what's going to happen is you're going to have an overzealous inflammatory response, which is also dragging the immune system into it. You really don't get autoimmunity without some level of exaggerated or uncontrolled inflammation. So they're actually both intertwined. And when you have chronic inflammation, it causes what we call the bystander effect. So it actually damages your immune system. Okay. So again, ferritin, when ferritin elevates, guys, ferritin is called an acute phase reactant. Ferritin elevations are also strong indications of insulin resistance, but it actually can just be the infection itself that's elevating a ferritin. Tara, we'd love to help you with that high C-reactive protein. I would strongly encourage you to grab a new patient consultation. And then your Epstein-Barr virus nuclear antigen was very high, as was VCA IgG and extremely low levels of cortisol after a 12-hour test. So Tara, again, you are very susceptible to viral infections when you have low levels of cortisol. So not only do we have to figure out why Do you have low cortisol? But we also want to use an antiviral protocol to actually help deal with potentially a latent pool of viral activity. Melanie Williams, can we be insulin resistant even with a normal A1C? Yes. Thank you for that question, Melanie. That's an excellent question. Can you be insulin resistant when your doctor is saying, hey, my A1C is, you're fine. Hey, you got a 5.2. Your A1C is perfect. Again, the hormone that keeps your blood sugar stabilized is called insulin. Your insulin does not have to stay normal, and in fact, many times it is going to have to be excessively elevated to keep your blood sugar stable. So unless you've measured your insulin, a normal A1C means nada. It means absolutely nothing to me. And same thing with the glucose. So you need to get glucose, A1C, and an actual insulin. And the reality is when you start using something like a continuous glucose monitor, guess what? You're gonna start to figure out what the triggers for your blood sugar are. And that's way, way more important to figure out the lifestyle that's driving insulin resistance rather than trying to take some berberine or some chromium, right? Or alpha lipoic acid, all these supplements you can take for blood sugar, forget about it. If what's causing your blood sugar is not regulated, you can take all the supplements you want in the world. Okay, so Tara, my thoughts on nattokinase. I do like nattokinase. So those people that have elevated platelets, lumbrokinase, nattokinase, again, I'm a fan of that. Specifically, again, anyone who has an elevated ferritin, C-reactive protein, and platelet. That right there is impending disaster. So if someone has elevated ferritin, C-reactive protein, and a platelet count, that is imminent stroke or heart attack, pulmonary embolism, cardiovascular event waiting to happen. So at that point, I am going to order a fibrinogen activity. And the reason is because if your fibrinogen activity is significantly abnormal, guess what? Again, your risk of stroke is going through the roof. Your risk of pulmonary embolism is going through the roof. Your risk of heart attack, right, is going through the roof at that point. It is a standard of care to make sure you know what your risk factor is, because you can't get fixed if you're dead. It just doesn't work. Not very well anyways. So you guys, if you have this issues, right, you need to make sure you follow up and you get a fibrinogen activity. It's a very standard blood marker, okay, and know what your stroke risk is. However, remember that usually we're talking about gut health, we're talking about blood sugar, we're talking about glutathione, we're talking about hormones. These mechanisms are reasons why, okay, people actually are dealing with elevated fibrinogen or platelets, etc. But again, the crazy thing was we started seeing all these elevated platelet activity. And now we're seeing a huge surge of ITP, okay? That is autoimmune platelet activity. So they started off with actually a surge of platelets because, again, of fibrinogen, and now they're actually seeing suppressed platelet activity because of autoimmunity. Okay, all right. So hopefully that was helpful as far as all the questions go. And Jamie, are you able to post that link into the webinar, folks? Webinar folks, if for some reason we're not getting you that link, I want you to email info@drautoimmune.com, and we will honor that special rate for you if you guys want a new patient evaluation. Okay? So mama bear, very high dsDNA. Again, that's associated most commonly with lupus, but that's not always very specific too. So if you want to know if mama bear, if you have lupus, well, again, it'd be a positive antinuclear antibody. Chromatin antibodies are actually the most sensitive and specific as it relates to lupus, and you need to have 4 areas of involvement. Okay. So again, if you want that link, devil first, right? Then you need to go to our link tree, our bio. You'll click on that button that says new patient evaluation. Again, that's $350, right? And then I'll get you the 90 marker blood panel. That'll also get you 90 minutes of my time. You have to be willing to change your diet. You have to be willing to take supplements. and you need to be motivated for us to actually even give you the exam in the first place and get you the test. Otherwise, we just refund you and we let you know, hey, look, come back when you're ready, because we don't want to waste your money and we don't want you to waste our time. Goldilocks. Again, the blood panel is included in that $350. That's for the consult and it's for the blood panel. Cougar, beautiful love. Awesome. Love it. Yes, Tara as well. Yes, I have seen an increase in patients with EOE. What's going on with you? Cougar, beautiful love. You keep trying, Toll. I can get to you guys. I don't know what that meant. Can you write that again? And Cougar, beautiful love, we've been having issues with our phone this week. Verizon has been not super awesome for us. So we think we fixed the problem. So if anyone's been trying to call us, we've had issues with Verizon. Again, we just work off of cell phones. Again, I have 100% remote practice. So that being said, if you guys have had issues with calling in, we apologize. Again, you know, the phone number is 303-882-8447. We actually kind of prefer people to go through the process of scheduling discovery calls. It's just kind of crazy if we send everybody to our phone at one time. It's just too hard for our staff to get back to all those inquiries. So when we can schedule these discovery calls for people, it kind of lets my staff plan out their day, and it just makes our time much more effective for people. Here. So Not Again says, how do we stop the tinnitus? Fix what you find. So it's really actually, again, it's going and figuring out why did you have the tinnitus in the first place. Remember, one of the things I said at the beginning of this lecture was the issues that you're dealing with now are as a result of the issues that you had while you went through the COVID infection. So the big ticket items are going to be gut dysbiosis, okay? That's your microbiome and other mucosal surfaces, low levels of glutathione. It's an antioxidant detoxification chemical, okay? We didn't talk about or touch about toxicity, but those are other things that really, again, suppress your immune system. Some toxicity is relevant. Insulin resistance is a massive issue when it comes to people with long haul. They have many times no idea that they're insulin resistant, okay? Reactivated Epstein-Barr virus. And then also, again, dampening of your mitochondrial activity, and your mitochondria is what produces energy. So this is, again, why so many people have headaches and brain fog and fatigue and myalgias and et cetera, is because they've upregulated something called mTOR, M-T-O-R, mammalian target of rapamycin. So again, that's another inflammatory-based issue. So it's utilizing, again, nutrients for the mitochondria. It's eliminating inflammatory triggers. It's utilizing the right diet, the right supplementation, the right proper tracking, and also individualized labs to establish what your root causes are. Okay, hopefully that helps. And by the way, guys, again, if you want a copy of the entire lecture, we're gonna load this up to YouTube. So you just need to email info@drautoimmune.com, and we will get you guys the link to the lecture so you guys can see the whole lecture from the beginning to the end. Allison, sleep apnea, lots of different mechanisms, but the number one cause behind sleep apnea is insulin resistance. So Todd Smith, insulin resistance is basically when you can't efficiently get glucose into your cell. And so what happens as a result of that glucose building up, you need more insulin to drive that in the cell. So then eventually what's going to happen is you require more insulin. And so you get into a vicious circle where, again, insulin levels have to continually raise because there's something called Le Charlier's principle, which just means to stimulate a receptor, you provide more of the thing that stimulates that receptor to get the same desired physiologic response. So as people become more insulin resistant, their insulin levels go up higher and higher, and guess what? Your hormones change, your immune system changes, your ability to deal with infections change, you start developing other secondary side effects from that. And you don't have to be just type 2 diabetic to be insulin resistant. It's a spectrum. Fatiguing after meals, craving sugar after meals are the most consistent symptoms indicative of insulin resistance. There's other symptoms too. Hormone-related problems, PCOS. Again, estrogen dominance. insomnia, chronic fatigue, lipid problems, right? Oh man, my lipids are bad. I need statins. Really? Or maybe we can figure out why you have high lipids. And the number one reason for people having elevated lipids in this country is their blood sugar. So again, it's figuring those issues out. Teresa, who does the blood work? So again, the person who does the blood work is who's contracted with Vibrant. So we use a company called Vibrant Labs. And you'll just have to go onto their website and figure out who does Vibrant Lab testing around you. And then that's part of actually typically the blood draw cost. So our $350 that you pay, typically the phlebotomy is covered in that cost as well. Things, again, if you guys are in Canada, if you guys are international, everything kind of gets a little bit sideways because, again, domestically, we can kind of control everything as far as with what's going on. We've contracted the best rates. When you get into all these different countries, like, it's just all turned on its head. That's where we have to figure out, like, how do we actually serve you per person. Okay, Jennifer, white blood cells through the roof, indicative of infection. Okay, so Teresa, if you're in New York, that's the most challenging state to do labs. So there's a chance you may have to go outside of New York to get those labs done. And I'm just being honest with you. But at the discovery call, we will talk to you about those issues. Okay? So again, all you need to do, go to our link tree in our bio. The top button that you'll click is that $350 new patient special. And that'll get you signed up for everything that you need. Okay? All right. Okay, so... Yep, Gollylux, we work in Florida, absolutely. We work in Florida. Okay. Yeah, Holly, if you're dealing with latent onset of diabetes, we can help you with that. Type 1.5, we have a lot of those clients. So we can definitely help you. Copper, 48, yep. Arizona, yes. Georgia, yes. Yes. Louisiana, Shannon, absolutely, we can help you too. Big tuna, early signs of lupus, hair loss, fatigue, joint pain, malar rashes, kidney dysfunction, swelling and retention of fluids. Yep, we should be able to work in Hawaii and Oahu as well. Okay, but again, we just got to figure out where you can get the drawn as far as for labs. So again, you'll want to grab a discovery, grab a consult, and then we'll get those figured out for you. Okay, and proton pump inhibitors, PPIs. Also known as Purple Poison Incorporated. That's all I need to say about that. Okay. All right. We are getting up there in time. Any last questions? You guys fire away, and then I'm going to go hang out with my family before I do my thing of falling asleep, as old men do. No, Copper 48, we're 100% telemedicine, so I don't have a physical office in Arizona. Okay. Charlotte Facciani, yes, we've seen over 2,500 cases of Hashimoto's and 1,000 of those at least in remission. So that's the number one thing that we see in the practice. It's the number one thing that I've seen in the past 15 years working through the functional medicine model. Erica, I like colostrum. I don't give it to everyone, that's for sure though. Okay, let me see, make sure we got any more webinar questions. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Stevie, for let me go to, looks like we couldn't post. Okay, so here, and then let's go to settings. Okay, hopefully that. Okay, thank you, Stevie. Appreciate it. There it is. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Thank you, Jamie. Awesome. Okay. Mama Angel, I'm sorry. Yeah, I goofed. I had to go in the set. I don't know why it does this, but you have to go in every single time and you have to allow chat questions. Felice, yes, 100%. Spike protein is spike protein. Copper 48, yes, you can call the office. So if you want to call the office, again, it's 303-882-8447. Hit 1, and then you'll get my new patient coordinator. I do recommend you grab a discovery call because, again, a lot of times you won't get my staff because they're on the phone with another patient. And so if you're struggling getting a phone call back from us, always grab a discovery call. At least you have a pre-planned time that you know that you'll get your call answered. What's up, Kathy? I love that you're from Wales. I have Welsh heritage, so Halaman is actually a Welsh name. So welcome, Wales. I would love to go to Wales. I want to go to Scotland too. Good night, Teresa. Appreciate you. So Nikki, green tea, phenomenal. So we talked about, again, I'll say the last thing, this NF-kappa B, this inflammation, right? So I'll give you guys some nutrients for NF-kappa B. Really good things, okay? So EGCG, that's a green tea extract, will downregulate NF-kappa B. Vitamin D, okay? Curcumin, i.e. turmeric, okay? Alpha lipoic acid, ALA, also downregulates NF-kappa B. Also, prebiotics and probiotics downregulate NF-kappa B too. Okay, guys, it's been fun, right? Like I said, if you guys didn't see the lecture, if you guys want a copy of that, info@drautoimmune.com, and we'll get you guys actually a link where you can basically go and listen to that YouTube lecture, and you'll have the ability to look at the very beginning of this lecture all the way through the end. Thank you guys so much for your questions. Again, if you guys have long haul, there is hope. Don't give up hope. It's the most important thing that you can do is you keep hope. Now, again, what you're gonna have to do is challenge yourself. I know you're tired, but you're gonna have to challenge yourself into doing things that you haven't been doing before. And I know that gets us a little bit out of our comfort zones, but for you guys to grow and grow towards optimal health, you're gonna have to get a little bit uncomfortable. And that's okay, but you need to find the person that will take you by the hand, right? And bring you through a process where you're being supported, your physiology is being, like the dots are being connected, like i.e. your symptoms are being connected to the system. When you can start to understand why you have dysfunctional systems, the therapies can be applied directly to the root cause and your body will still heal itself. Again, until next time, guys, again, this has been fun. This is Dr. Ian, Dr. Autoimmune. And again, your body can soar again, but remember, do something different and hopefully you will get a different outcome. Anything else, guys, again, send me a DM. Happy to answer your questions. And again, until next time, God bless. Take care.